Hey everybody, welcome back to Sounds Like a Drum, Cadence Independent Media Production. If you're just joining us, we talk about tuning and tone and hacks and myth busting, and today it's actually all tone. We're going to talk about what it means to get a good sound out of the drum relative to how hard you're hitting it. Okay, there's a lot to unpack here. There's some history involved, there's some tuning involved, there are some myths and some misconceptions and a few sort of proof of concepts that we're going to go after, but what we're boiling down to here is that it seems to be getting prevalent that the harder you hit, the more energy you have, and that translates to being groovy or having a good groove. And there are components of that are true, but we need to remember that the sound we're making is also important and not just the energy that we might think we're projecting or that we're actually projecting. Thanks again, as always, to ProMark by D'Addario for being our presenting sponsor and helping us out. I am, again, sticking with the Forward Acorn 5As because I like them, and I'm going to get some of my own soon, I think. So there's two sides to this for me that are specific to the tuning, and I'm going to talk about that first. We're going to use two snare drums today. One of them is going to be a little bit physically deeper and tuned a lot deeper, and the other is going to be a little shallower and tuned a little more in the stratosphere, just to talk about how these things translate. The toms are staying the same, which is to say in the mid-low range as we normally do, and the bass drum has a pillow in it from the previous episodes, and it is tuned also in sort of the average range that I would use it for pop and rock music and general kind of modern things. In case you're curious, today all the snares and all the toms have the new UV2 batters, which is super fun. This is some of my first time getting to spend with these heads. The bass drum has a UV EMAD on it and has the EQ3 ported on the front. And for the bottoms, we have the 300 on the bottom of the snare. We have cleared G1s on the bottoms of the toms, and as I said, there's an EQ3 with a port on the front of the bass drum. This comparison here, because it is kind of a comparison, is going to be a little different than we normally do it. What we normally do is we set the volume of the kit the same for the whole video, and we don't do any kind of adjustment of volumes because we're trying to present a sound that is going to go with what you're seeing. What we're going to do today is we're going to normalize all of these playing demonstrations so that basically what that means is that we're going to turn up the quiet ones and we're going to turn down the loud one just a little bit so that they're all going to present at the same volume. But you'll be able to see this is the quiet one because I'm down here, and then the loud one I'm hitting it as hard as I can. And what you're going to be listening for, hopefully, is the actual sound when it's been brought up, because these are also things that really apply in mic'd situations, whether it's live or in the studio or whatever, where it's not about you having to throw the sound really far, it's about what you're putting into the mics or what you're putting into the sort of near field of listeners. Now, we have some other mics up in the room that are going to add even more dimension to how these sounds behave in the space. And if you want to check that out, please just head over to our Patreon. The link is below, and there's going to be a bunch of extra content and comparisons over there. Now, the times that I would choose this kind of tuning would be situations where I'm not going to play a lot of notes on the drum. This is about the sound of 2 and 4, basically. Or if you're looking to have kind of messy stuff where the rolls are kind of running over each other, if you're after that kind of sound, maybe old-timey stuff too. And so that necessarily means that we need to make sure that we're getting a great sound out of the drum. And if smashing the drum is starting to make it behave strangely and mess with the note and mess with the sustain, then we have to back off that intensity, because that's the whole reason that we're after this is a sound. And if we get our sound and then we play it in a way that doesn't get the sound out of the drum that we're looking for, there's really no way to fix that unless we change the way that we're approaching the drum physically. Now let's check out this drum in context with a couple of different grooves. So hopefully in this, you can hear the differential when we move through different levels of aggressiveness toward the drum and different kinds of touches and stuff. And this goes for the toms too. This for me is more of a snare specific thing, and to a slight degree less the bass drum also. But the toms also react to this, and you have to think in terms of sustain that you're drawing out of them, attack that you're drawing out of them, and then kind of tune accordingly and approach them accordingly. In the louder selections, I'm burying the beater on the bass drum because I also want to show that, like, some people think that that's a big sound, like you hit it with everything you've got, you put every single ounce of energy into it. Is it the biggest sound out of all of them when we normalize the volumes? That's kind of what we're looking at here. Now, phase 2. That was a metal drum tuned really low. Here's a maple drum tuned really high. That one, I didn't play any rim shots. I played in the center the whole time. This one, I'm going to only play rim shots, and I'm going to treat it more like a standard approach to the drum, but we're going to go through that same litany of volumes, and the playing demonstrations are going to be normalized in the same way. This is particularly important to me because one of the things that I went after when I started playing small rooms in New York when I moved here was that I wanted to have the sound of a rim shot, and I needed it to be something that someone could stand right in front of my hi-hat and not ruin their night, basically. In addition to things like thinner cymbals and maybe bringing brushes with you, if you want to have pocket, rim shot can be part of that pocket, but it doesn't have to be from behind your head. It does mean that you have to record yourself in practice at those low volumes and make sure that your feel is staying the same. I actually had a little bit of a tricky time playing to the click today at the very high dynamic because honestly, I don't do that much. So it's a little bit less of my comfort zone than medium and low dynamics. And your situation will necessarily be different than mine and every other person that you know. And that was kind of a cool blind spot that I got to notice today and gave me something to think about when I go home. Now at this tuning, the character of the rim shots is not as dramatically different as the fat back playing we were doing on the other drum because the tension is higher and all things considered, the attack is not really that different. There's different amounts of force going in, but since the head's not moving that much, there's just less likelihood that we're going to destroy its capacity to make the sound it's trying to make. I think also that that is a reason why this kind of tuning is very functional at very low dynamics, like, you know, if you're doing straight ahead like bop stuff or samba, different things where you need it to be very, very clear, or in hip hop situations where you need a loud rim shot to be clear and also for tiny ghost notes to be articulate as well. If I do big rim shots and then tiny ghost notes on the previous drum, they're both going to be messy for different reasons. So this is all just sort of like funneling us toward the idea that there's a not best but a most functional direction to go with tuning within the music that you're trying to make, and that's up to you. It can be whatever you want, but it's about making it easier on you, the player, as well as getting a sound that'll be great for what you're doing. So to sum up, putting ourselves in uncomfortable situations with tunings and trying to figure out how to get the best sound out of them is never a bad thing. This is equally useful in live acoustic settings, in mic'd live settings, in particularly recording studio settings where you're trying to get different colors on different tunes and mix things up a little bit. Big, low for slow tunes, maybe this one for higher, faster kind of situations. But at the end of the day, there's also a bit of a technique thing involved as well because you don't want to be uncomfortable when you're trying to make your music. So it's an opportunity to work on your versatility as well. Thanks again to ProMart by D'Addario for being our presenting sponsor. And please like, comment, and subscribe to our video. Please hit the notification bell down there so that you find out when we're posting new videos. Currently, we're doing every Tuesday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I guess the last thing that I want to know is what your choices are when you are thinking about stuff like this, or if it's something that's never really occurred to you that you needed to think about. We all make concessions in our tuning and our playing to get the sound we're after, whether it's muffling or head choices or seat height, you know, whatever it is. Yeah, and I'm curious about this one, so let us know.